listen to on deeply personal issues like the decisions whether to stay in the race or not?
Me? Look, I've been doing this a long time. The idea that I'm the old guy, I am. I'm old. But I'm only 3 years older than Trump, number one. And number two, my mental acuity's been pretty damn good. I've gotten more done than any president has in a long, long time, in 3.5 years. So I'm willing to be judged on that. I understand why people say, God, he's 81 years old. Whoa, what's he going to be when he's 83 years old or 84 years old? It's a legitimate question to ask.
You know, after Donald Trump was shot on Saturday, I got to give Joe Biden a lot of credit. He went on national TV and he gave a speech. Not from the teleprompter, but he gave a speech about toning it down. Toning down the hateful message, the hateful rhetoric, all the bullshit that's going on in this country for the past 9 years. Then later the next day, he went into the Oval Office and gave basically the same speech. But it was still the same speech of, we have to bring the temperature down in the country. And of course, he read it off the teleprompter, no big deal. But then I watched his interview last night with Lester Holt. And during his interview, Biden went on to tell, again, more lies that the left never calls him out on. He talked about how Trump said there would be a bloodbath in this country if he wasn't reelected, yet he was talking about the auto industry. He talked about Charlottesville, and Trump said there were fine people on both sides, and even Axios, which is left-leaning, said that's actually not what was said. And Biden went on to continue during his interview, spreading the hateful message that the left has been pushing, again, for 9 years. And I thought to myself, what happened in 2 days? And the answer was simple. Joe had to use his head. He had to think of the answers. He didn't have note cards. He didn't have a teleprompter. He didn't have somebody telling him what he needed to say.
Joe Biden faced some probing questions and got testy last night during his interview with NBC News anchor Lester Holt. The 81-year-old lashed out when Holt pressed him on his disastrous June 27th debate performance and bristled when the journalist asked him about Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. He also attacked the media during the interview for, not being tough enough on Trump. In a way, I'm kind of enjoying seeing the media finally start to press him. He doesn't seem to do well when he's put on the spot, but it's a little too late and no one thinks it's genuine. Just look at the reaction from the MSDNC last night. Quite a masterclass in mental gymnastics.
President Biden sitting down today with NBC News anchor Lester Holt in a combative and feisty interview. Lester, look, why don't you guys ever talk about the 28 lies he told? Where were you on this? Why doesn't the press ever talk about that? 28 times it's confirmed he lied in that debate. What's with you guys? Come on, I'm on the horse. Where have you been? Even at the end there, yeah, come back and we'll talk about the stuff that matters. We'll talk about the issues, meaning stop asking me about me and about these politics. Our colleague Lawrence O'Donnell joins us. Hi, Lawrence.
Hi. That was Lester Holt doing Lester Holt and Joe Biden doing Joe Biden. And look, it should be obvious enough there. Maybe it isn't, that Joe Biden really likes Lester Holt and thinks he's admires his work. I didn't think that was a combative interview. I thought that was Biden having to respond to questions that were challenges, and he responded to them, his way.
I mean, combative in the sense that he was punchy. He was there to be like, give as much as he was getting.
Response. He was like close to the net in tennis, sort of a thing. Yeah, and he knows he has to do that. But the one thing that he can't erase from any of these interviews is how old he is. And that's the fact. I've always known that's how old he is. I knew what his age was 5 years ago. I knew what it would be now. I knew what his voice was going to sound like. It's going to sound weaker. It's the way it happens. His voice is going to be softer, weaker. But the question that Lester was really there when this was originally scheduled, what he was really there to ask about and find out about is, has the storm passed? Yeah. That was the real question. There's only one person who knows the answer to that, because there's only one person who decides, and that's Joe Biden. And for Joe Biden, the storm passed as soon as it started, because he just said, no, I'm staying in this race. He's never wavered from that. And so, this is where we are with that tonight. I don't think anything changed on that. I don't think that anything about that interview is going to change anyone's ability to change Joe Biden's mind.
He asked him the question that I think I've heard a lot in just offline personal conversations about this with people just in my life, not in the news business, which was, who do you listen to on deeply personal issues like the decisions whether to stay in the race or not? I can't tell you the number of like handicapping decisions I've had with people about whether he only listens to his wife or he only listens to whatever that advisor is nobody can ever remember the name of, or he only listens to his son or whatever. And his answer was as short as it could possibly be. Who do you listen to on deeply personal issues like the decisions whether to stay in the race or not? Pause. Me. Me. Look, I've been doing this a long time. The idea that I'm the old guy, I'm old, but I'm only 3 years older than Trump, number one. And number two, my mental acuity has been pretty damn good. I've gotten more done than any president has in a long, long time in 3.5 years. So I'm willing to be judged on that.
What has he done? Can somebody in the comment section give me one thing that he's accomplished?
I understand when people say, God, he's 81 years old. Whoa, what's he going to be like when he's 83 years old, or 84 years old? It's a legitimate question to ask.
I mean, I think what we're seeing here is that there is somewhat of a time lag between the news cycle and the subject of the news cycle. You know, I think to Lawrence's point, for Joe Biden, the thing that's relevant today is the campaign as it is today. And there's still a news cycle that is still in 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and the question of whether he stays on the ballot. And so Joe Biden, I think, expressed some annoyance with the media for staying in that mode when he's ready to keep combating like the battle at hand. And so I think there is just this lag, and I'm not sure if he can escape it because, I mean,
there's no lag. The donors, they want that guy out of there. But Joe, being Joe, he is a hard-headed, he's just an individual that is going to do what he wants to do. He doesn't care about the party. He loves the position. He loves the power that he has. I'm sure his wife, I'm sure his son has told him, Dad, you still got this. And he's going nowhere. He's I guess maybe a pig-headed old man.
I mean, people keep asking him the question he's answered already. And the reality is, as Lawrence said, within the Democratic Party rules, there really is no way to force him out if he decides he ain't going.
Watching them twist themselves into pretzels to defend Biden is almost comical. Just last week, they were all but ready to push this guy out of the race. But I think especially in the wake of the weekend's events, they've realized that for better or worse, Biden is their guy. They're stuck with him. In the same interview, Joe Biden defended his language in the lead up to Saturday's assassination attempt on President Donald Trump, blaming Trump and claiming that his rhetoric is the real problem.
Mr. President, thank you for sitting down with us. There's a lot to talk about. I'd like to start with the horrible events of last weekend. It has shocked a lot of Americans. A political rally, your opponent, Donald Trump, shot in the middle of greeting his supporters. You spoke to Mr. Trump afterward. Can you give me a sense of that conversation?
Very cordial. I told him how concerned I was and wanted to make sure I knew how he was actually doing. He sounded good. He said he was fine. And he thanked me for calling him. I told him he was literally in the prayers of Jill and me. And I hope his whole family was weathering this.
Well, let's talk about the conversation this has started. And it's really about language, what we say out loud and the consequences of those. You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was, there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. Focus. I mean, there's a whole range of things that, look, I'm not the guy that said, I want to be a dictator on day one. I'm not the guy that refused to accept the outcome of the election. I'm not the guy who said that wouldn't accept the outcome of this election automatically. You can't only love your country when you win.
Mr. President, you've been in politics a very long time, so let's speak frankly. We're all adults here. Has this shooting changed the trajectory of this race?
I don't know, and you don't know either.
I don't know, but
No,
have you something you've given thought to?
No, I've thought less about the trajectory of the case than two things. One, what his health is, that was secure, number one. And number two, what happens from here on in terms of the kind of coverage that the president and vice president and former president and new vice president get in terms of, look, I've never seen a circumstance where you ride through certain rural areas of the country and people have signs there, big Trump signs with a middle sign saying F Biden, and a little kid standing there putting up his middle finger. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that is just inflammatory and a kind of viciousness. It's a very different thing than to say, look, I really disagree with the way he takes care of taxes, the way he wants a $5 trillion tax cut for people who are making a lot of money next time around. Doesn't focus on working class people.
And I asked him about his struggle in the debate and the calls from some Democrats for him to step aside. Do you feel like you've weathered the storm on this issue of whether you should be on the ticket or not?
Look, 14 million people voted for me to be the nominee in the Democratic Party, okay? I listened to them.
In your last TV interview, you were asked if you had watched the debate. Your answer was, I don't think so, no. Have you since seen it?
I've seen pieces of it. I've not watched the whole debate.
The president also responding to news of Donald Trump's new vice presidential pick. I want to ask you about, just shortly before you and I sat down, former President Trump named his vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance. What does that tell you, his qualities, what does that tell you about former President Trump's values in terms of who he will surround himself with in a next administration should he win?
Well, it's not unusual. He's going to surround himself with people who agree completely with him. Have a voting record. I support him. Even though if you go back and listen to the things that J.D. Vance said about Trump.
When even Lester Holt looks at you like, man, cut the BS. The big guy is in trouble. Crosshairs, bullseye, what a mess. To suggest that Trump somehow brought this on himself, turning it around on Trump supporters, I think that his reducing it to a semantic argument is practically an admission that he knows what he said. And Joe, remember, words have meaning. Does that sound familiar to you? Cut it out. He's been using that dog whistle his entire presidency. This is the man who called Trump and his supporters extremists and threats to the very foundations of our republic and everything America stands for. Just on Sunday, Biden pretended to condemn political violence in remarks from the Oval Office. He called for the need to lower the temperature in our politics. And what does he do next? Go back and spew divisive rhetoric. But I'm not shocked. He didn't even last 24 hours. This is shameful, to say the least. 48 hours after his opponent gets shot, and under very questionable circumstances, might I add, he goes on TV and continues his dictator on day one and bloodbath lies. These may be the only few lines he can remember, and he's like on a loop, repeating the same things over and over again. But given Biden's history of saying whatever he needs to stay in power, whether he believes it or not, I don't know, guys. He's been calling Trump an existential threat for years. He even said he only ran for president to defeat Trump. This is the kind of language that creates an environment where political violence becomes more likely. Saturday was shocking, but sadly not surprising. And the reason why it wasn't that surprising rests mainly on the Democrats and their mainstream media allies. And even in the face of such blatant hypocrisy, Democrats continue to deflect and lie. They're not interested in unity or lowering the temperature. All they're interested in is maintaining power and control. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Drop me a comment down below. I appreciate all the love and support. Consider joining the ARP family. It supports me. It supports this team. It gives us the ability to produce this type of content on a day-to-day basis. I appreciate each person that has joined the ARP family thus far. Keep God first in your life. Stay prayed up. And I'm going to catch up with you all next time. Peace.